this quote is passed around, or the statistic, I would say, is passed around quite frequently, but it's worth repeating. Of the 70,000 people currently serving in UN peacekeeping missions, only 8% are women. And this is something that we need to change. And so we're very, very pleased to be supporting the ASEAN IPR through this discussion today and through the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives. Canada is committed to advancing gender equality in peacekeeping. One of the ways that we do this is through the ELSI initiative for Women in Peace Operations. And this initiative is about more than just increasing the number of women in peacekeeping operations. It's about breaking down the real systemic barriers that prevent women from participating fully in peacekeeping. Through the ELSI initiative, we're working with countries around the world to develop solutions from targeted funding to innovative research so that peacekeeping forces can truly reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. Beyond peacekeeping, Canada has long been a leader in advancing the women, peace, and security agenda. We know that women are not just victims of conflict, but they are powerful agents of change. And that's why we feel that the national action plans on women, peace, and security are so important, and so much so that now there's more than 100 countries who have such plans. And for Canada's National Action Plan, we're laying out how to integrate women's perspectives and leadership into conflict resolution, peace building, and recovery efforts. We're also very proud to be working with ASEAN to advance the women, peace, and security agenda in the region. Through dialogue, capacity building programs, and targeted support, we're helping to strengthen ASEAN's efforts to ensure women's meaningful involvement in peace processes. And in fact, Canada has an ambassador for women, peace, and security, Jackie O'Neill, and she was in Indonesia just last year, and she participated in one of our WPS dialogues that the mission of Canada to ASEAN led. And Kartika, who is all the way at the back of the room, again, congratulations on the award. But we were really delighted to have Kartika moderate our final series of our WPS dialogues last year, which we were very pleased to co-host with a permanent mission of Malaysia to ASEAN and Universitas Indonesia. We know that we've achieved a lot already, and it's really a reminder that when we work together and share our respective resources and expertise, we can achieve so much more. So before I close up here, I just want to take a moment to share with you that I'm very, very excited. We have a special Canadian guest with us here, Lieutenant Colonel Melanie Lake, who's with Canada's Armed Forces. Melanie, welcome. We're delighted to have you here. Some of you may have met her last year. She was here in Jakarta when Ambassador O'Neill was in town and of course met with the ASEAN IPR team. Lieutenant Colonel Lake will share her wisdom and wealth of experience from the front lines in conflict zones and from her years working in the office of Canada's WPS ambassador to advance women, peace, and security agenda. I'm absolutely thrilled that you're here. It's lovely to see you again. I'm really happy that you'll be sharing your insights and your experiences about peacekeeping. So the bottom line is this: peacekeeping and peace building are stronger, and peace is more sustainable when women are at the table. So let's keep working together to make this reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Singmin, for the opening remarks. I would like to request for a group photo. May I invite the moderator, speaker, Ambassador Singmin, and the ASEAN IPR Executive Director to come to the to the stage for a photo session. Yes, if you want to.
The only man. One, two. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. We would like to have another picture with the audience. Can I request everyone to come down and then facing the away from the audience? Can I also ask the audience to stand up for the picture?
One, two, three. One more time. One, two, three. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Everyone, may reserve their seat. As Ambassador Sigmund has other engagement to attend to, we would like to thank Ambassador Sigmund for her presence here today. We hope to see Ambassador Sigmund in our next event. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask for your attention as I relay some of the house rules to ensure everybody's comfort in following the discussion. Today's discussion will be 2.5 hours long. This event is simultaneously live streamed on the ASEAN IPR YouTube channel. For participant joining us online, please ensure that you have a steady internet connection and the updated version of the Zoom software. During the presentation from the speakers, attendees in Zoom who wish to pose a question to the speaker may use the Q&A box, while viewers on YouTube can write their question in the live chat box. Please follow the format of questions as explained by the organizers in the chat box. Please refrain from using the chat or message box function on both platforms for personal or extensive discussion. For participants attending offline, there will be a dedicated Q&A session after our speaker have finished their presentation. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand and the organizer will hand over a microphone to you. A little bit of information from the hotel. Please be informed there will be a fire alarm test at 1 p.m. today after the event. We ask all participants to be polite and considerate during this session. Thank you for respecting this house rules. We'll now proceed to the discussion session. And to be our guide for this morning's discussion, I would like to introduce our moderator, Ms. Putri Rahma Asri. Ms. Putri Rahma Asri is an advocate for youth activism and women participation in peace and security. She works as a program outreach and partnership officer at the Peace Building Project, which is committed to educating the community at large about conflict transformation, peacemaking, and humanitarian action. She holds a bachelor degrees in international relations, concentrating in international and transnational crime from Diponegoro University. Currently, Putri is working on a project called the Global Girls Creating Change, G2C2, recognizing climate change as a driver for insecurity by empowering girls in activism and green entrepreneurship to reduce vulnerabilities, including those linked to climate-related conflicts. May I invite the moderators to the stage? And with this, I hand over the mic to the moderator.
Good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, speakers, and all the participants. To start, I would like to say we are privileged to have with us His Excellency Igu Siagung Sakapuja, the Executive Director of ASEAN IPR, and then also the representative of Embassy of Canada to ASEAN, members of the Governing Council and Advisory Board of ASEAN IPR, and also our valued ASEAN partners. I would also like to take a moment to say hi to our offline participants who are here with us today. I see many of you joining from universities across Jakarta with a background in IR, gender studies, security. Wave your hand if you are excited to be here. Wow, okay, cool. Where are you from with the red jacket? Venus University. On the yellow jacket from Universitas Indonesia. Okay. And also to our online participants, we're also happy to have you. Even though you are not here with us, you are much part of this discussion. Feel free to click any reaction if you are very enthusiastic with this today's discussion. You can click thumbs up, clap, or hearts to show your enthusiasm. Anyone online? Okay. Okay, thank you all for your presence and for having me as your moderator. It's a great honor for me to welcome each and every one of you. For our today's discussion, empowering participations, ensuring women's full and meaningful involvement in peacekeeping efforts. And this is the ASEAN IPR discussion 2024 session 2, and it's personally exciting for me because I will share a little drawback because I think back in 2020 during the pandemic, I attended the very first or like the second of ASEAN IPR discussion when I was still an undergrad student, and it was fully held online. And now here, 4 years later, we are still here, like going strong the discussion and still evolving the discussion into hybrid format to ensuring that online participants who are not based in Jakarta. So let's give applause to ASEAN IPR for still constantly knowledge and also promoting the culture of peace. All right, with that energy, let's kick things off with a question, like a little fun question. If anyone know this answer, raise your hand, and for the online participants, drop your question, drop your answer in the chat if you are online. The question is, how many female peacekeepers from ASEAN countries were deployed? This is not the recent data. As of April 2020. Anyone knows the number of female peacekeepers deployed from ASEAN countries? From online? I'll give you a second. Maybe just like the hint is the number in 3 digits.
308.
Oh, wow, yeah. 308. There were 308 female peacekeepers from ASEAN countries out of total of 4,860 peacekeepers deployed. So how many percent is that? It's only like 6.3%. What does it mean? It means that it's not a big number yet, but it shows both progress and urgent need for greater inclusion of women peacekeeping for ASEAN countries. And that's exactly why we are here to discuss how we can amplify the number and ensure the women's full participation in peacekeeping effort. Here's the thing, just we talk about meaningful, it means that the women's full participation in peacekeeping should go beyond numerical numbers. So it's not about it's not just about increasing the numbers, the percentage, but also ensuring the women are fully empowered. So therefore, today's session is centered on leveraging the expanding the expertise of women peacekeepers by exploring the dimension of women empowerment, highlighting the success stories, and identifying strategies to further promote women's leadership and participation in peacekeeping. So allow me to introduce our distinguished speakers. The first up, we have Colonel Ratih Pusparini, who is joining us online. She is the first Indonesian female peacekeeper to serve in the UN mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She's also an officer for development studies, deputy for strategic studies at Lemhanas, Indonesia. Say hi to Colonel Ratih online. Hi.
Hello. Good morning to you all. Thank you, Mbak Putri.
Okay, next we have Ms. Farah Zamira binti Farushkan, Assistant Secretary at the Policy and Strategic Planning Division, Ministry of Women, Family, and Community Development, Malaysia. Last but not least, we have Lieutenant Colonel Melanie Lake, the Canadian Armed Forces Liaison Officer to Canada Ambassador of Women, Peace, and Security. Now, please join me in welcoming Ms. Farah and Lieutenant Colonel Melanie Lake to the stage. Woo!
It's right there.
Colonel Lati, Ms. Farah, and Melanie. Can I call you just Melanie? Okay. It's very hard to spell it like again with Lieutenant Colonel. Okay. Yeah. How are you all doing? Okay. Now before proceeding to the discussion, let me walk you through today's discussion flow. The first speaker is Colonel Rati, who is joining us online. The second is Ms. Farah, and the last is Melanie Lake, and all of them will present their presentation for 50 minutes each. After all the presentation, we will move to the Q&A session. For our online participants, feel free to use Zoom chat or a YouTube live chat to ask questions, make clarification, or even just send your appreciation. ASEAN IPR team will monitor the chats and make sure that your questions are passed along to our speakers. Okay, let's start our discussion with Colonel Rati Pusparini, who is joining us online. A quick reintroduction. She is the first Indonesian female peacekeeper to serve in UN mission in Democratic Republic of Congo. And now she is with Lemhanas Indonesia since 2018. From those experiences, she has received many honors, including the Republic of Indonesia Meritorious Service Medal and UN Missions Medal for her contribution in Congo, Syria, and Lebanon. Colonel Rati, the screen is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Mbak Putri. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Salam kebajikan. Good morning to us all. First, I would like to greet His Excellency Mr. I Gusti Agung Wasaka Puja, the Executive Director of ASEAN Institute of Peace and Reconciliation, distinguished representative of Canada Embassy, distinguished Governing Council and Advisory Board of ASEAN IPR, distinguished ASEAN partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me, and now I'm in the middle of a duty outside of Jakarta, so please accept my apology if it is not really clear as we want before. I'm going to talk about women and peacekeeping and the challenges and lessons learned based on my experiences on 3 missions so far. Yes, please, next slide. This is a bit about me, and I was blessed to have chance to talk in UNHQ with Major General Christine Lund, the first ever female force commander in, I think she was in Cyprus. Next, please. And this is my assignment. The one underlined is the mission that I experienced during my service as an Air Force member. And also I had chance to learn about civil affairs in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And yeah, the mission in Syria was the memorable, if I can say, because something has changed now in the place, and we all know what happened now. Next, please. This is just women as peacekeeping. So we can see that Major General Christine Lund with Mr. Ban Ki-moon, His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, and other is the CIMIC, if I can say, the civil military coordination between women peacekeepers, the military or the uniform with the civilian, and we see also the women doctor from Vietnamese contingent, and Ella, if I'm not mistaken, she's the Netherlands Army, I think in the mission in most probably in Sudan and Malaysian contingent. I met them in Lebanon and one Indonesian. I think it is in Sudan. Why I put these pictures? As far as my experiences in 3 missions so far, like women has chance to get more parts to be involved in the mission in any peacekeeping operation or in any peacekeeping mission. We have more access actually to especially to the local communities. Next, please. The challenges that we face on the ground is and stereotypes like women must be protected, cannot go outside by herself. I experienced it because I was the only lady officer in my team site in Bunia and also in Homs. In Bunia, it's not really a challenging environment among the peacekeepers in the same team site. We talked nicely and they treated me a bit different. I keep telling them, just treat me the same like you treat your man colleague. I'm here the same as you as a military observer. But still they said, no, we need to protect you because you're the only lady officer here. Okay, and then the cultural barriers, the conflict areas in Lebanon, in Syria, and also in Congo was like at that time is she's a lady, she can do many things like men can do, and we don't want to get close to her because especially in Lebanon and Syria because their culture and in Congo they try to get close but I can say that not as close as I want, so I can get more information from them. They see me as a Muzungu, the foreigner, and a lady, so they keep a distance. They just try to speak, but not in a matter of what we need from them as the information to share to our HQ and also to other agencies in the mission. And the third one so far is the undervaluing women's contribution in the male-dominated work culture. We know that military is a male-dominated work culture, so sometimes, or maybe most of the times, in some parts, then they will say, nah, you stay here. Like, okay, let me drive because I'm not the driver for the team. No, Rati, you just stay there. If I was the patrol leader, then I can just give them command to do this, to do that. But once I'm the patrol members, then they will, no, you just stay there, sit back and relax and enjoy the scenery of Congo. They have beautiful country actually, the Congolese. And in Syria, on my first month as the advanced team of UN supervision mission in Syria, at that time only 2 of lady officers among about 15 advanced team in Syria at that time. My friends always say, no, Rati, you don't have to drive. Okay, just be the patrol leader or the patrol member. Okay, then. They keep telling me, are you okay? Are you okay? Just to make sure that I'm okay because the rain of bullets or all the explosion around us was quite, yeah, it's not scary for me. At that time, I felt no fear at all. I thought that if it is my time to die here, this the fate of me. And they call me, even in ONSMES members, they call me the crazy major from Indonesia, because I can say I was fearless. Why at that time like that? I'm not really sure at that, but when I saw the civilian, the local civilian, the local people, then I realized that I'm blessed to be alive like this. What about them? Even to go outside their house, they cannot do that, or even they must go outside the house and be refugees in Lebanon or in Jordan at that time. So they keep telling me like, nah, women can't do this. And I said, no, don't say that. Don't keep telling me that. I got the chances to be the patrol leader. I got so many information from the opposition group at that time, and also from the government side of Syrian government, from the governor, from the military, and from the police at that time. Even even from the civilian. But I have to work harder to show them that I can do the same like you. That's belong to the challenges. Next, please. The lesson learned that in my 3 missions so far is we are more visible. So I told you that once the lady officer or lady peacekeeper or women peacekeeper come to the place, then more women, more local women and children and elderly, they share their information, which is very important to the mission. And we are easy, especially to the victims of gender-based violence. It's easy for us to get information compared to our men colleague. The empowerment women in the area operation also, we encourage them to do more, to do something, at least to give them a chance to get, especially for the economy of the family, to do something. Next, please. Bitaras. Yeah, this is the suggestion that I would like to share to you, that to have more women in peacekeeping operation, we need stronger commitment from our senior leaders and commanders. So the decision makers should do this through to have more women, and we have to reform our culture also, and adequate resources, and the plan to have more women is so not only us in the grassroots or the one who doing this thing, but also we need the commitment from the higher leaders and commanders. And we must have create a global gender advisory network. We know that so many gender courses now happen in Indonesia and outside of Indonesia or in ASEAN. And why not we have a network so we can share more, especially for the uniform women peacekeeper. And the third one, we need more specific training to get more position, not only as a contingent member. Like we can join the intelligence task force, ops staff, CIMIC, not only in medical, logistic, or admin duties. That's my suggestion. Next, please.
Honorati,
Yes.
sorry for cutting your speech. We only have 2 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah. So
Thank
next,
you.
please. I just want to show you that this is what happened. I was the only women officer. The one in the middle picture is in G3 Ops branch of MONUC FHQ in Kinshasa at that time in 2008. I was the only women peacekeeper among 32 peacekeepers at that time. And this is what my activity visiting the one with a school girl, school children was in Bunia area, and also on a parade there at this, I think at that one military ceremony. Next, please. And this is again in Syria. It was 2012. So from 300 peacekeepers, only 7 lady officers there, or only 7 women peacekeepers there. Next, please. And again here in UNIFIL in 2012, we can say that's a very safe place for a mission, and hopefully our colleague there in Lebanon nowadays, they are all safe and sound. And again, I was the only lady from about 15 Joint Ops Center personnel at that time. Next, please. See, this is my message: strong woman and strong word. I think that's all. Thank you, Mbak Putri. And say hi to all peacekeepers around the world, Melanie and also Zahra, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, you mentioned the underwhelming women's contribution within male-dominated work culture, which is something that deserves our serious attention. And we also have taken notes the recommendations that you shared about the need for stronger commitment from senior leaders and commanders to champion the gender equality, and also the importance of creating networks to ensure gender perspectives are effectively mainstream, and also more training opportunities, including specialized training programs designed for women. So next, let's hear from our second speaker, Ms. Farah Zamira binti Faroush Khan. While Kona Rati represent military side as peacekeeper, Ms. Farah will bring another perspective as a civilian peacekeeper. She is the first and only female civilian officer from Malaysia to serve under United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon between 2021 and 2022. Currently, Ms. Farah is serving as an Assistant Secretary at the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development Malaysia, where she is part of the team formulating Malaysia WPS action plans. Ms. Farah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Putri. And thank you for inviting me to this discussion series. It's truly an honor, and it's really humbling to be among all of you today. And just thank you to His Excellency, Mr. I Gusti Agung Wesaca-Puja, the Executive Director of ASEAN IPR, and the representative from the Advisory Board and also ASEAN partners. So today we are here to discuss about women in peace and security, mostly how to promote women's full and also meaningful participation in peacekeeping efforts and also peace building. And for that, I would like to talk about men. You see, when we talk about peace and security, we are mainly talking about the military and to some extent probably the police. And when we talk about the military and the police, we are essentially talking about men. So to put it simply, and as the first speaker has also mentioned, peace and security is a male-dominated field with a male-dominated culture. So looking from that perspective, how do we ensure that more women can not only enter, but also thrive in this man's world? And I'm gonna talk based on my own experience as a civilian working in the military world, and also in the security sector in general. And I would like to share my thoughts on why I think we need to focus on how men can become allies for women in peace and security. And I will be talking from the perspective of female peacekeepers who are sent to these conflict zones. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, let me just share some background for context. My country, Malaysia, has been sending troops to the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon since 2007. We started with a smaller group of a battalion, I think around 200 to 300 people, and since 10 to 11 years, we have been sending a battalion of around 850 to round it up. And from that number, 10% are women. And also, next slide, please. In every battalion, there will be one civilian officer mostly in charge of the finances of the peacekeeping operation. And since 2007, as you can see, the civilian officer has always been male officer from the Ministry of Defense, where I was working before. But in 2021, that changed when I was selected to go, so making me the first female civilian ever sent along with our troop to UNIFIL. And until today, I am still the only one. Next slide, please. So this is some of the female peacekeepers in our camp in Lebanon. So the question is, how did that happen? What happened in 2021 that because previously the ministry had never sent a civilian woman before. So in hindsight, when I think about it, and in all honesty, what happened was simply because all the men who made the decision at that time allowed a woman to go. So that's the truth, whether we like it or not, because they are the key decision makers. Because we are talking about security, we are talking about the military. Next slide, please. So to illustrate that, let me just share the selection process for a civilian officer to go to UNIFIL. So before we can even apply for the position, for the civilian position, we have to get our boss's approval, because if you get selected, you will vacate your current post. My boss at that time, I had a male boss. He allowed me to go. He supported my application, so he signed off the release form. So when he approved my release, then only I could apply for the interview. So that's so then the next stage is I had to go for the interview, which was led by the Undersecretary of Human Resource, which was also a man. And then he proposed my name to the top management of the ministry. And then the key decision maker was the Secretary General of the ministry, of course, who, as you might have guessed, was also a man. So he agreed to send me, effectively helping break the glass ceiling. All right. My name was then submitted to the Joint Forces headquarters, the military arm the military branch which is in charge of the UNIFIL mission. And fortunately, the chief of the Joint Forces at that time, who I later get to know, more personally as a very pragmatic and progressive leader, he did not object to my appointment, because although civilian was selected by the Secretary General, but the military top brass, they still have some. They can still object to our appointment if they feel like it will somehow affect the operation on the ground. So as you can see in my experience, for me to even have the opportunity to go to UNIFIL, all the key decision makers are men. I mean, of course, I have had the support of many of my female colleagues and my female bosses, and I think their support influenced some of these, played some role to influence these decisions. But ultimately, we are talking about who held the power to make the decisions to send women to peacekeeping operations. Next slide, please. And while I was there, I saw how important it was for male commanders on the ground to understand the strength and advantages of female peacekeepers, so that they will be tasked with suitable roles, so to maximize their impact. Because we can send female troops, but if we don't use their unique traits, then or just to fulfill the quota, then we cannot talk about meaningful contribution, which is what we are trying to achieve here under WPS agenda. And of course, as most of the next slide, please. most of these roles are in CIMIC, civil military cooperation, which are naturally more suitable for women because we interacted a lot with women and children who are the biggest casualties in any conflict. And these female soldiers also support their male colleagues in the day-to-day operation during the mission because these soldiers that I work with, the female soldiers, they are skilled technicians and they are trained combatants. So, but none of this matter if the men who made the decision on the ground don't understand this and couldn't leverage the strengths that women have. Now, next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Now, I have heard a lot of conversation on how women should be allowed to sit at the table, whether it's for peacekeeping mediation or any other means of conflict resolution. But have we ever asked ourselves who is keeping us from sitting at the table? And in fact, are we even allowed into the room? And if not, why? So I think if I ask this question to women, the answer to this question will be men. And honestly, I think we need to consider the possibility that most of these men, especially in the military, they don't even realize the extent of the power and privilege that they have because it's simply how things have always been. You agree with me, Melanie? Thank you. And I believe the reason that we see slow progress in this field because the resolution was adopted in 2000, so it's been like 25 years, and we're still talking about this, right? Because we did not involve the most important player in this field enough, which is men. Okay, next slide. So, but for us to be allies, I think both men and women need to embrace the fact that we are not competing with each other. We are complementing each other with our different strengths and capabilities. So we don't have to fight for seats at the table. What we have to do is to add some more chairs around the table. So now we come to the how. How do we invite men to be our allies? Of course, I'm speaking from my experience and observation only. I am no expert. There may be like studies on how to effectively do this. But from what I see, I think that we need to invite our allies in all across defense, diplomacy, and civil society to discuss men's role in advancing WPS. Because we have talked a lot about women's role. We have talked about how women can contribute, and we all know that. That's a pretty established fact. But we need to discuss men's role in advancing WPS. And this is very important because we are talking about overcoming institutional barriers and also changing gender norms. You cannot change gender norms if we don't engage with the other gender, right? And also we, of course, next slide, please. And then the second one is, of course, political leadership. Political will is very important if we want to make changes. And our leaders, our top leaders in the country, they should be talking about this in, it has to be something that is casually talked about, that like is the natural part of story. It shouldn't be like an afterthought. So that's how we can fully integrate a gender perspective into our workings. And then we need to create more WPS events like this aimed at men to engage them in the discussion. I found that most of my male colleagues, and even in the military, they are actually quite supportive of WPS. When we tell them what it's all about, they are very happy to support us actually. But we just need to like talk to them and probably clear out some misconceptions that they have. And I think because when we talk about women events, it's usually aimed at women. So now we should try to do more events that aim at men specifically. And personally, I think the most important how is we need one male champion at every layer of the process. Because it's just how a thing is. Because when I talk about, like, for example, the military, right? They have this certain like chain of command, and when you have one person in command start influencing a change, So it will help a lot, and it will ensure that women are not just represented in some token format. They will really actually they will be really actually empowered to contribute. Next slide, please. Okay, I think this picture summarizes my sharing point. These are some of the female peacekeepers with their permanent representative of Malaysia to the United Nations, and also our military attaché when they came to our camp in Lebanon to discuss WPS. I found it refreshing and maybe to some extent fascinating to hear men in the position of power to supporting women's role in peace and security. And they really wanted to listen to understand our needs and our challenges. And when these men talk, other men will listen to them. So that's why it's important to have them as allies. And I think I would like to end my sharing session today with something closer to home. Before I applied to go to Lebanon, I told my father about my plan. And after I got selected, I told him, and if he had said no, I think I wouldn't go. You know, I guess that's just how I was raised, and I think how a lot of us are raised in this part of the world. So of course, my father's support and blessing is very important to me. And I have been one of the lucky ones because my father is very supportive, and come to think of it, he never really there was never really a discussion about gender at our home. Then that was probably because all my siblings are female, so with no sons, there was no comparison really. So I grew up unaware of the differences of treatment between men and women because my father just treat us as human, not as woman or man. So I was quite lucky in that form. So, but I have heard stories about how our other female peacekeepers, our from the military, they are eager to go to serve in these missions, but their husbands don't let them most of the time because, most of them they have small children because these peacekeepers normally are younger women, right? So when that makes me realize that this WPS agenda it actually essentially starts at home, right? When we write our WPS action plan, of course we will look at it from the national, regional, and international perspective, and rightly so. But we also need to understand that the cultural shift has to happen, beginning at home. Because next slide, please. Because at the end of the day, these female peacekeepers are someone's daughter and someone's mother and someone's wife. So without a strong support system, it is incredibly challenging for them to contribute meaningfully to peace, although they are very capable. And part of that support system is men. So I believe men hold part of a very important solution to this issue. So, and I see here today a lot of younger generation, and I think you can initiate that culture shift, from your own in your own homes, so that we can have more women in the future to contribute in peace and security. I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farah, for your insightful presentation. Before going to the second speaker, I would like to inform that we are sorry to our one audience about the technical problems with TV screens, both the main and the two TV screens over there. The team is working on it, so don't worry, and we are sorry for that. Okay. It's particularly interesting, Ms. Farah, that you highlighted the role of men as an ally in advancing the WPS agenda. An important takeaway that from your points that we need to actively engage men in WPS discussion like this and emphasize their role in driving the meaningful progress. I also note that it can be by encouraging male as a ally, by being a male champion to lead by example, and urging male leaders to integrate gender perspective into working of security efforts in the security fields. All right, so now we have reached to the final speaker, Melanie Lake. Lieutenant Colonel Melanie Lake is a graduate of Royal Military College of Canada. Fast forward 20 years, she made a history by leading Operation Unifier Roto 11, the first women-to-women transfer of command in Canadian deployed operation. For her outstanding work, as the task force commander, she was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal. But that's not all. Alongside her current role as a Canadian Armed Force Liaison Officer to Canada's Ambassador for WPA, she founded an NGO to provide aid to Ukraine and actively support Afghan refugees in resettling in Canada. And also, not to mention, she's also a mom. Okay, Melanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be back in Indonesia and have the chance to engage again with ASEAN IPR. Your dedication to forging and fostering peace and your efforts to promote gender mainstreaming in peace building are really commendable. And I'm also immensely honored to speak alongside Colonel Pusparini, Farah, and thank you so much, Putri, for hosting us today, and to Team Canada for your relentless promotion of women, peace, and security here as well. It's also really, really inspiring to see so many young women and young men in the audience today. Really happy to be able to share this with you. So it's my second time in the region for work, and each time I find it's a profound learning experience, deepening understanding of your regional security issues, learning many, many lessons from your implementation of the Women, Peace, and Security agenda. And there's certainly so much momentum in this region right now on that. Seeing our common challenges to women's participation, and also the common challenges that we're facing on non-traditional security threats via climate change, mis and disinformation, pandemics, violent extremism. It really highlights our need to work together, especially on these threats that don't recognize borders. I also feel the strong connection between our countries, even though we're quite far apart. We have very strong people-to-people ties. We are all Pacific nations. Our security is very much shaped by our maritime environments. And we share these common goals in advancing WPS and women's meaningful participation in peacekeeping operations. I'm actually here right now participating in a course that Canada's delivering called Integrating Women and Gender Perspectives in Armed Forces to military officers and non-commissioned officers from Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. And it's just a really remarkable opportunity to learn from each other, share our experiences, challenges, and solutions to overcoming barriers. Yesterday, we had a really remarkable experience. We had the opportunity to visit your PMPP, the Peacekeeping Training Center, and we had a chance to speak with 130 young women who are just completing their training and about to deploy on UN peacekeeping operations. Some have actually already left and gone to Central African Republic, and the others are getting ready imminently to deploy to DRC and Lebanon as peacekeepers. And I found it actually quite emotional and inspiring to see this group of professional, brave, motivated, and competent young soldiers who, are so excited to go abroad for this opportunity to serve their country on a mission overseas. And the efforts, I think, of ASEAN countries right now in promoting women's roles in peacekeeping operations, meeting and in many cases exceeding the targets, it's quite commendable, as well as efforts like like the course that we visited yesterday, this additional training to make sure that women have all the skills they need to deploy into these missions on equal footing, and ensuring that they'll be successful. It was a really important reminder, I think, that these targets for women's participation in UN peacekeeping, it matters. They matter. They open doors for opportunities. And, you know, I had the chance to speak with these women and spoke about the strategic importance of what they're doing right now. I mean, they are very much helping to meet their country's strategic objectives in foreign and defense policy. They're contributing, you know, in multiple ways, multiple very important ways to international security priorities, both increasing the number of women in peacekeeping, but also improving security in the countries where they're deploying. They're also increasing the effectiveness of their missions. I mean, we know very well that diverse teams make better decisions and security solutions are more comprehensive and effective when women are involved. And we spoke about how much their voice and their perspective matter at the planning tables of their operations and in the conduct of their operations. We talked about the impact that they will have on advancing gender equality, both in the countries where they're deploying and at home. They are incredible role models and I would say sources of inspiration for the women and girls in the countries where they're deploying. Their very presence there in uniform is helping to break down barriers and to defy stereotypes about what roles women can occupy. But they're also role models and inspiration for women and girls coming behind them here at home. The experience and credibility that they're gaining, it should be a path to advancement within their organization, giving them space to, you know, make even more changes, have a greater impact to come as they advance, and making space really for more women in roles outside the traditional realm that have been filled within armed forces. But we've realized that in order to generate more women for operations, we need more women within our armed forces at home. And this means we really have to address the barriers within our own forces to women's service and ensure that our own organizations are a place where women want to serve and feel that they belong. So this, you know, besides just increasing the number of women in peace operations, this really leads to security sector reform at home. And that's something that benefits everyone. You know, you talked about how this is not a zero-sum game. When the situation, when the work environment improves for everyone, this is something that's, you know, this is good for everyone. Every time I have the chance to engage with women peacekeepers and see how much they value this opportunity, you know, the agency, the credibility, and the experience that they gain from deploying, but also hear the stories they tell of the immense impacts that they see themselves having on their missions, I'm convinced that we need to advocate more strongly for this cause. I've certainly seen, you know, through personal experience I did 3 deployments to Afghanistan and then commanded our training mission in Ukraine, both the challenges that women face and the significant impact that our participation has on mission outcomes. For many years, I in my own organization, I felt like my leadership style was criticized. You know, framed as putting people before the mission or being too soft on the soldiers. And, you know, we've had a lot of issues within the Canadian Armed Forces in recent years around things like toxic leadership and a culture that isn't necessarily receptive to women or really impacts everyone. And as these discussions emerged, I really started to think that maybe my people-centric leadership style might be just the sort of leadership we need to get out of that crisis. And I saw that from many of my women peers, that our leadership styles weren't always recognized or valued by our superiors, but they were highly appreciated by our subordinates and by the people who worked alongside of us. I was told before deploying on multiple deployments that I wouldn't be accepted by the locals because I was a woman. And that couldn't be further from the truth on the ground. Being a woman, I was able to gain access to many spaces that my male colleagues simply couldn't go and engage with the population in different ways. And that allowed me to gain additional perspectives that in turn influenced our operational plans. I saw frequently as well, though, how we were disadvantaged within our mission and how I had to take on additional tasks simply because we didn't have enough women deployed. So even when I was in, commanding an operation on the ground, I would be pulled aside to do search of women because we simply didn't have enough. So we were disadvantaged as a task force because we lacked women participating. I would say as well that I never had protective equipment that was designed for my body. So it was a continuous challenge in demanding physical and threat environments. Many of my Canadian women peers who have deployed on UN operations have shared some of the challenges that they've faced in terms of not necessarily having gender responsive leaders, being marginalized at sometimes, dealing with harassment and discrimination. And this just reiterates the tremendous impact that leaders can have and the importance of gender responsive leadership. In Ukraine, when I deployed, promoting women, peace, and security was part of our mission objectives. And this was the first time that I felt in the very nature of being a woman deploying into the command role that I was, that alone was helping to advance some of the mission objectives. It was helping, again, to break down some stereotypes. I had, when I was commanding a combat engineer regiment in one of our mechanized combat brigades back in Canada, I had a really unique experience where we actually had a critical mass of women around the decision-making table. I was commanding the engineer regiment. We had a woman commanding our artillery regiment, a woman commanding our field hospital, a woman as the regimental sergeant major for our service battalion, and the chief operations officer, our G3, was a woman. And it was really remarkable, actually, to see the difference you can have, the difference when you actually achieve critical mass, which doesn't happen all that often in our quite male-dominated environment. We really saw the difference. When we were doing our high readiness exercises, the evaluators remarked on the very comprehensive nature of our plans. Some of the things that we were factoring in were things they hadn't seen before. Soldiers within the brigade noted a change in the level of support they felt. They felt the environment had gotten more positive, and this is men and women. Young women in the brigade told us how much they valued seeing women leaders within the brigade. And, that made me think back to, as a young lieutenant, when I first got to a combat engineer regiment, I was one of the only women there. And when I got back from my first tour in Afghanistan, all of a sudden we had a woman as a major who was commanding a squadron. That woman, it was amazing seeing her in that role. I was able to see a woman, someone like me, in a place that I wanted to get to. And actually right now, she's our first woman serving as our chief of defense staff, one of only 2 in the world right now. So I do want to certainly recognize Indonesia's leadership with UN Security Council Resolution 2538, the first standalone resolution to address women in peacekeeping. And I think it's notable that you had 97 countries co-sponsor that. Like, this is an area where there is broad support. And certainly the strong leadership from ASEAN member states, I mentioned, exceeding the targets, but also taking innovative steps like building networks, these specialized training programs, knowledge exchanges, identifying and breaking down institutional barriers. When I was looking at the young women yesterday, it really struck me that, I think we owe women peacekeepers dedicated and sustained effort to ensure that the mission environments that we're sending them into are ready for them, that they're receptive environments that will allow them to contribute in a meaningful, fair, and equal way to their full potential. And this is where Canada has concentrated a lot of our efforts. And again, our work is very much informed by the challenges that we're having at home, the crisis that we dealt with on sexual misconduct, on culture that tolerated and sometimes rewarded abuse of power, these non-receptive environments that made it very hard for us to recruit and retain women, which impacted our ability to deploy more women. And also seeing how abuses of power negatively impacted men, and how addressing these are a net positive. And we know that there's no one actor that has all of the solutions to address the complexities of gender inequality within the UN peacekeeping structure. And that's why we all need to work together, UN, member states, research partners, civil society. The ambassador mentioned earlier the ELSI initiative. So this is a Canada-led global effort to enhance the meaningful participation of women in peacekeeping. Women have the right to serve and diversify the talent and perspective. This fosters more effective outcomes. And when we talk about meaningful participation, I mean, most of my colleagues have talked about this, what it means. This is when women can hold positions that are in line with their training, their rank, and their area of expertise, when they have the same access to training, promotion, and career progression as their male colleagues, when they contribute to and are included in all aspects of operational mission planning and decision-making, when they hold operational command and leadership positions, non-traditional roles, when their workplace is free from harassment, bullying, and intimidation, when they serve under leaders who value their participation and set conditions from the top for a positive mission culture that doesn't tolerate abuse, marginalization, discrimination, when they have infrastructure that's designed to safely accommodate them, protective equipment that fits and provides proper protection while not interfering with their movement. The ELSI initiative, one of the big tools that it has is conducting these barrier assessments, having countries, militaries, institutions conduct barrier assessments that look at, they've established 10 common barriers. And I certainly want to recognize that within the region here, Cambodia has now completed a barrier assessment as the first country within the region. So it looks at these 10 barriers and then identifies what's preventing women from deploying, both within the national level and within the deployment environment. It gives us a chance to have real meaningful data and look at then the solution space, and funding is available through the ELSI fund to then help address some of these barriers. But perhaps more importantly, it gives us a shared language. You know, when we're all looking at this from a perspective of 10 barriers, we have a shared language where we can talk about our common barriers and work together on trying to find solutions. And even just the process of going through these barrier assessments in a lot of cases has raised awareness at the working level, at the institutional level, around the importance of gender equality and women's participation, both in domestic institutions and in peacekeeping missions. Because again, we can't address numbers in peacekeeping. We can't increase that if we don't increase the number of women in our force and reduce barriers within our national institutions. So right now there's 20 different institutions that have done these from across 15 countries. And although there's unique aspects and barriers based on culture, in more cases, I would say we find more commonality in our barriers despite what countries we're coming from. Over half ranked deployment criteria, household constraints, and gender roles as high priority challenges. Almost half identified deployment selection and peace operations infrastructure as high ranked barriers. 2/3 identified social exclusion, and half identified top-down leadership as priorities. And these results that we're seeing collectively.
Sorry, we have only 2 minutes.
Okay, gotcha. They really mirror our own experience at home. We did a barrier assessment and found that deployment selection, peace operations infrastructure, and social inclusion were among our top barriers. So some of the other things, some of the other mechanisms that we're using are things like existing UN mechanisms, the C34 committee that looks specifically at peacekeeping. In 2023, we had the first ever gender responsive recommendations and for UN contingent owned equipment. So that means proper equipment for women, clothing, medical access, and provision of menstrual products. Also work on infrastructure, gender responsive camp design. There's now about 14 different UN camps that have implemented this. So this means safe ablutions, accommodations, recreational areas, just trying to take into account, a receptive environment for women. I guess as a final note, I think that advancing women, peace, and security in a military peacekeeping context has two main elements. But as my colleagues spoke about, gender responsive leadership underpins all of these. We don't need leadership support. We need leaders to lead on this. This is women, peace, and security is a security issue like any other security issue that we expect our leaders to lead on. And I think the two key pieces of this are increasing women's participation, but also the ability to integrate gender perspectives into operations. So that's about outcomes and increasing effectiveness, really integrating gender-based analysis into our intelligence, our planning, our operations, our conduct, to reduce vulnerabilities, but also to strengthen our engagement and our effectiveness. We've made significant gains to date through collaboration and coordination, and it's so important that we continue to work together. We have to preserve these gains. We have to keep the focus on this. This is the Women in Peacekeeping is the only global indicator in the UN Secretary General's report this year on women, peace, and security that was trending upwards. And that really hasn't happened by chance. This is a lot of deliberate effort. And if we take our foot off the gas pedal now, I don't think we can be confident that this will keep proceeding in a linear way. We're not immune to the global backlash that we're seeing, the regression of generational gains of women's rights. So as much work is happening right now on the future of peacekeeping, women's participation is core to the future of peacekeeping itself, especially the ability to adapt to rapidly changing environments where we need the full range of capabilities and the best talent to address it. I hope that we can continue to cooperate on this, and especially as Indonesia will be hosting the next prep conference for the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial coming up very shortly. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nolani, for your insightful presentation. I can note many things, but one or two takeaways that I can share with you all. In order to achieve more women peacekeepers, we need more women forces at home and require security sector reform at home. And also, thank you for also highlighting the importance of gender responsive leadership. Okay, thank you everyone, the speakers, for the insightful presentation. Now we are opening the floor to Q&A. I invite all participants to pose their questions. For offline participants, please raise your hands, state your name and institution you are representing, and let us know who your questions is directed to. Oh, wow. Okay. Wait a minute. For online participants, feel free to submit your question via Zoom chat box or YouTube live chat. Please keep your question brief and respectful. Let's start with the in-person question. Okay, right. Which one's can you ask okay. I will start with counting down, and you will raise your hand first. 1, 2, 3, raise your hand. Over there. The first one.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Good morning. Yeah, my name is Nadine. I am from Universitas of Indonesia. Try to ask, I would like to ask to the Colonel, I'm sorry, Melanie, Colonel Melanie. So my question is that, do you think entering the military liberates women or reinforce internalized sexism in women. Given the way the military works, clearly it's profoundly hyper-masculine. And then I would like to, I want to give another question from my friend. The next question is, how can this effort be maximized to align perspective more effectively for all men who maybe don't have any women or gender perspective? Also, from what I observe, the peacekeeping roles are still very normative, focusing on traditional women's roles such as nurturing. So are you also maximizing women's roles at the negotiation table? What are the challenges you face as the limited representation of women? And how do you adjust strategies to ensure women's voices are truly heard? Thank you.
Melanie, do you want to directly answer? To save the time? Okay.
I'm not sure I'm gonna get at all of your question. So talking about the hypermasculine environment, I think for many years, women serving in armed forces have felt that they have to adapt to fit into that. And that can pose immense challenges. Back in Canada, we had in 2015, we had several high-profile cases of sexual misconduct that led to an inquiry by one of our chief justices and into sexual misconduct and harmful and inappropriate sexual behavior within our armed forces. And when she published her report, she had gone around the country. She had spoken to many women. And when she published her report first, some of my women peers and we had gotten together one evening, and we were reviewing the findings and saying, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know who she spoke to. This doesn't represent our experience. Like this isn't our organization. This doesn't reflect my experience. But then we started talking more, and we started talking, well, this happened to me, and this happened to me, and oh yeah, this happened to me too. And all of a sudden we realized, oh my God, we do have a problem. And we've been so institutionalized and trying to fit the mold that we didn't recognize all of the elements that we were tolerating that were not acceptable, all of the ways that we were changing our own behavior to fit in. But I think that's changing. And I think, certainly one thing that gives me hope, when I was commanding my regiment, at one point I had a group of, I didn't have many young women in my unit, but at one point, one of them came to my office and she said, we have some issues we want to raise. And she explained to me some of the challenges that these 10 young women out of 450 people were experiencing. And I couldn't believe it that, they were some of the very same things that I had dealt with 20 years ago as a young lieutenant in the regiment. But what was different was the fact that they were not willing to accept it. They were coming to me, they were bringing it to me as the CO and demanding that this be changed. So I think that the idea that women have to adapt to the institution, that's changing. We're recognizing that the differences are actually what make us stronger, the diversity of leadership styles. And it doesn't mean, women are better leaders than men. It doesn't mean women are better at soft skills or men are better at hard power. Both of us are capable of both. But it's the combination of these, the recognition that diverse perspective and diverse leadership styles are what are going to make us stronger. I'm trying to remember now your other question. Maybe I'll let my colleagues have a chance to answer, but maybe please remind me the second part of your question as well.
Okay, so how can this effort be maximized to align perspective more effectively? Also, from what I observe, the peacekeeping roles are still very normative, focusing on traditional women's roles, such as nurturing.
Colonel Rati, do you want also to take this question for your answer? Colonel Rati?
Maybe I'll just add something to what Melanie said just now. This is exactly what I feel. When I was, because I'm a civilian, but if you are in the military, when with the military culture, or whatever culture it is, you are ingrained in that culture. You won't see things that other people see. So sometimes it's good to have a perspective from outsiders. For example, in WPS, the military can work closely with the civilians so that we, the civilians, can also give our perspective. Something that you think is normal is probably not, right? And we actually see that because we are from the outside. So I think that's where it's important for both sides, the civilian and the military, to work together in WPS. Thank you.
If I can just add one more thing on peacekeeping roles, I think part of the challenge is getting in the door, and that door has now been opened since we have these targets, we have quotas, and we've got a deliberate effort to get more women on peacekeeping operations. I think things like what we saw yesterday at the training center are vital, making sure that women going into these jobs, even if they're coming from more traditional trades, including administration or medical, that they're getting this additional, we call it green training. So shooting, patrolling, driving, so that when they go into that environment, they're set up for success. And when they're successful, that alone starts to change mindsets. But a huge piece of opening up the full spectrum is gender responsive leadership. Having leaders who believe that women belong here, employ them in the roles, in the full spectrum of roles that they're trained to do. So I think we need deliberate efforts to educate and hold accountable our high-level commanders for leading on this. It should be part of their commander's guidance. It should be part of their performance evaluation. But we also need to get this in at the ground level. Training, integrating women, peace, and security principles into professional military education. So you hit it at the top level, at the bottom level. Don't forget the middle. We often call it the frozen middle. We often forget to engage mid-level leadership, who are so critical in actually implementing these things. And I think those are some of the keys to changing mindset.
All right, so we are now opening to another offline question. I think I will collect 2 questions only, and one person needs to propose one question. Okay, the first one with the black hijab. Yeah. Oh, okay. Actually, the one with the black hijab over there. Yep. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much for the speakers. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nur Afiyin. I come here as a representative from the Indonesian Defense University, and I just really get impressive from your material that you give to us today. And I got the interesting questions to you, all of you, both of you as the speaker. And my questions is, what is the specific differences from the civilian and military, the involvement, both of you, do you have the specific way or tools to give the involvement to the WPC itself? So that's all my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Noor. So your question is directed to all the speakers?
Yes. Oh, we missed the last part, what you said.
Can you repeat the last part?
The way and the specific way and tools.
Do you guys have the specific ways or tools to involve, like the big involve to the WPC itself? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And The last question from the offline audience at the back. Yeah, very back.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to the respected speakers. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Keisha Abigail from International Relations Global Kas Binus Alam Sutra. As we all know, misandrism is an understanding that women are more superior than men, which is often confused with feminism, leading to the majority of men believing that feminism is a bad ideology that focuses on getting rid of men. And because of that, many men refuse to give their support to spread feminism. Now, in your perspective, how do we educate people who misunderstood misandrism as feminism, and how do we help them understand that feminism is about equality, not domination? Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much for the questions. Okay, now I will give the floor to Kolarati, I think, first. For the first question, the second question for Nur, from Universitas Pertahanan. Yeah. The question is, what is the specific difference between the military and civilian peacekeepers between when you are in peacekeeping involvement in terms of your ways or tools that you are facing? Maybe it can be answered by, first Kolarati, and second you will followed by Ms. Farah. Thank you, Kolarati. The floor is yours.
Yes, from Unhan. Specific differences between military and civilian involvement in or civilian peacekeepers, military and civilian peacekeepers. For military, we have only 1 year mandate deployment. So our tasks and responsibilities is already stated in our mission. You do this, or you deploy as a G3 ops staff, or you deploy as a contingent member, or you deploy as a chief CIMIC or whatever that stated from the UNHQ. So the demand or the requirement that from Indonesia military will be at this position. While as a civilian, as far as I know, they can be peacekeepers with it's almost like a fixed term job there in the mission. Some of them, they come as UN volunteers, which is I think 6 years contract, and the fixed term is for the whole time you work as a peacekeeper it is in the mission or in the field or in the HQ. That's the specific differences. While about the job, that's based on your position in the mission. That's what I know.
Thank you, Kolarati. So, Ms. Farah, do you want to add more with the perspective of civilian peacekeepers?
Okay, as a civilian peacekeeper embedded in a battalion, I'm actually part of the battalion. So there is no specific or very different tool that I use. It's more like a supporting role, because in any operation you have like combat and also non-combat roles, and so I also roll in and roll out with my battalion for 1 year, and I think probably the only difference is my chain of command, because I could report directly to the ministry. I don't really have to go through. I did go through the military normal chain of command, but there's this another layer for check and balance, so I can just go directly to the ministry. But all in all, there's no much different if you are with the battalion. But I think if you are with the, for example, working in the HQ as UNIFIL officers, then it's probably a little bit different. Yeah, that's all.
less about the differences between military and civilian roles, but speaking to specific tools. What we're trying to do, both on the military and civilian side of our Department of National Defense and Canadian Armed Forces, is to institutionalize the role of gender-based analysis into all of our practices. So be it policy, equipment procurement, operational planning, intelligence analysis, and collection planning, working to integrate gender-based analysis as an analytical framework that we apply to whatever aspect of military or civilian planning that we're doing. And then developing, I guess, institutionalizing and professionalizing the roles of gender advisors to assist with that throughout the institution. And, you know, really important again is getting that into the operational planning process so it becomes second nature for planners. Do you want us to tackle the second question as well, or wait?
Oh yeah, the second question is from Abigail from Venus University about how we educate the feminism within military or like peacekeeping efforts. Okay.
I think, I don't think that's a coincidence that people are confusing those terms. I think it's quite deliberate. I think that there's a lot of disinformation out there aiming to polarize and push back against efforts towards gender equality. And a lot of this stems from the idea that, you know, if you're used to privilege, equality can feel like discrimination. But this is also a tool that is very much being weaponized. Anti-gender narratives are being used to divide our societies, to find fault lines, to polarize us, to the point that, you know, we can't talk to each other, that we can't make decisions. Stoking divide within our societies reduces our resilience, our ability to absorb shock, whether that's from conflict or natural disasters. And gender and this idea of feminism, gender equality, these are very hot button, deliberate issues where a lot of I think our adversaries are investing considerable effort into countering. So that's one side of the spectrum, but there's also just, you know, genuine misunderstanding about what this is about and what we're trying to do. And I think that's really where we need to make convincing arguments around this is not a zero-sum game. You know, we know that societies benefit. I mean, the number one predictor of the peacefulness of a country, whether or not a country is going to go to war with its neighbors, is how women are treated within that society, the level of gender equality, more than things like GDP. So, you know, this is an important concept that gender equality has economic benefits, social benefits, so many benefits that I think it's really important to communicate that in clear ways and counter a lot of the deliberate disinformation that's out there. But within militaries, you know, when we talk about the Women, Peace and Security agenda, I think it's really important also to meet people where they're at. So we can come in from the human rights angle, and maybe we'll get somewhere, maybe we won't. But where I like to start within militaries is talking about the benefits for operational effectiveness, and pointing out that, you know, there's a lot of people out there who do this really well, integrate gender perspectives into their operations. And that's our adversaries. They are continuously looking for vulnerabilities based on gender biases. For example, Boko Haram, 2/3 of their suicide bombers were women, and that is very much playing on gender biases that don't see women as threat actors, that allow a woman in a capacity of a suicide bomber to move with greater ease through checkpoints, playing on the fact that there's not likely to be a lot of women in security forces who would be able to search her. So don't we want to be as competent as our adversaries in using this, in employing this, in understanding the gender dimensions of conflict, of understanding how gender can be weaponized against us, to defend against that? I think, you know, there's a lot at play here that we can explore to really, you know, highlight how this benefits not just everyone in terms of a better environment, but also the overall effectiveness of our operations?
Thank you for the question. I think this narrative about from feminism becoming like too dominating and trying to push men aside. I think it's because probably because we have been talking about what women want. It's always what we want. So that creates perhaps a negative perception and some misconceptions on what we actually want to do. I think it's important for us to create spaces for men to understand that integrating women in whatever process, and here we are talking about the peace process, it's not about doing women a favor. It's about directly benefiting the mission, because you want to be successful, and if that is one of the ingredients, then you have to tell them that they need that ingredient, right? Instead of putting it or framing it in a way that seems like we are only trying to advance or favor women. We need that's why I say it's very important for us to engage with men, clear some misconceptions, and help them realize that having women in these processes will make the efforts or the operation stronger and more effective, which is ultimately what we want. And I know that there's like a practical concern around how to integrate women effectively in an operation without compromising or disrupting the operational efficiency. Like you said just now, you have problems with even the military issue equipments. They are not made for women. So will that somehow affect the operation, right? If we send women. But I think these challenges can be easily overcome by having open dialogues and also setting clear policies, what we want, and for policies for gender inclusion, and more important, I think most importantly is to have male leaders that are willing to challenge the status quo, and like you said, to really lead and show that these kind of changes are needed, because it will bring a positive outcome for the mission itself. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kolarati, do you want to add more? Because you also mentioned in your presentation about to integrate gender perspective and streamline it and mainstream it in the peacekeeping efforts.
Yeah, actually, in the mission that if talk about the equality of the job is, we don't see that this is the women or the woman. The women or the men peacekeepers. But still, the understanding of our colleague, the peacekeepers is, we can say, more because mostly come from Asian and Africa. For the Western colleagues or the peacekeeper from Europe and Canada, it's not a new thing for them, but some peacekeepers or most of the peacekeepers from Asia and Africa will say when we discuss about the equality in our job in the mission, then they will say, okay, but if it is gender equality is for you, is your demand, it's not us. So I keep telling them at that time, I just like, this is not about the women, this is about us. So because we work together in the mission for the accomplish of the mission or the mandate of the mission. So it is really a hard work to socializing the understanding about the equality. I'm not talking about the feminism, because if we talk about the feminism in a peacekeeping operation is some kind like a bit I don't know. This is maybe because of my experiences at that time. It's still a bit a sensitive thing. So if you go as a military observer, so you don't talk about any equality because we work together. That's equal. So my message to the younger generation, you, especially the students in for today's event. So this is start from you to understand what is the equality uh, in our we can say our daily life, or even in a peacekeeping mission. If some of you are from military or police, or even you as a civilian, if you would like to join a UN mission someday. So that's a start from you. You educate yourself, your peers, your friends, your colleagues, and then start to then come to the highest higher level. So that's because the way young people talking about this different with me as the older generation. So maybe you could suggest to ASEAN IPR to have a workshop for the young generation who has a concern or who would like to know more about WPS and all about the gender equality in a mission or in the peace process, or being a mediator or negotiator in a peace process. So that will be a good chance for you, and you will see that how this understanding will give us more support to do together for the peace. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Rati and Ms. Farah and Melanie. Now we are moving on to question from online participants. We are sorry, due to time constraint, we might be able only to entertain 2 questions from online participants. The first one is from Dr. Arifah Rahmawati from ASEAN Women Peace Registry Indonesia. Oh, hi, Dr. Arifah. I met her during KUPI in Semarang in 2022. Your question directed to 3 speakers. Could you please share your further thoughts in regard to the implementation of other WPS pillars, the preventions and protections before, during, and after the deployment of female in peacekeeping operations? Thank you. Colonel Rati, do you want to start answering this question?
Yeah, maybe in a very short one. We can have pre-deployment training. So we provide training on gender analysis, gender-based violence, human rights, and then we develop also the specific guideline. That's before, and the mission planning and the design also. And the most important is the recruitment or selection. So ensure that women will be represented at all levels of the peacekeeping mission. And the recruiter are the one who committed to gender equality and human rights. While during deployment, we mainly talk about the protection of civilian. We encourage more participation in peace process in the conflict area. And we can also doing the specific gender sensitive patrols to the area. And we made some investigation to be reported to the HQ. And after deployment, then we will talk about the post-mission analysis. We evaluate what we do during the implementation of the WPS, the preventing and protection. And we continue to support the local women or the women organization or women institution and for their participation in post-conflict. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Rati. Melanie, do you want to add from the other side?
Just to build on what you said, I completely agree and think that, when we talk about the implementation of protection, prevention, and relief and recovery, one of the most important elements is the engagement with grassroots, community-based women's organizations, strengthening civil-military relations, because these groups they're at the front face. They have a critical role in community resilience. They will be essential partners in identifying the protection needs of the community, how the military force can best address the needs of the entire population, including differing impacts on women, men, boys, and girls. Critical role in prevention of things like escalation, conflict-related sexual violence. These community-based organizations are often the first to see changes in the local environment, to see indicators and warnings, often gender-based indicators and warnings that many others may not see, or that the peacekeeping intelligence apparatus may not be able to identify. And then obviously the role that they play in recovery and in relief. The more that we can engage and find ways to meaningfully support their activities, I think will enable their role in preventing the resumption of conflict and hostilities.
Farah? Yes, I think for me, the most important element in the pillar is the first one, which is participation. When we have participation of more women, I think all the other pillars will fall into place. And sometimes what I see is that we are doing this still on a more like voluntarily basis. But we can also use, try to force some of this agenda forward by maybe making some policies and then have like gender responsive budgeting, where if you want to go to the mission, then you will be financed based on your efforts to maximize the participation of women in peacekeeping operations. I think we need a balance of voluntary involvement and also some mandatory policies that we should adopt, so that we can push this agenda further and much quicker than what we are seeing now.
Okay, and another question proposed by Prameswari Omegawati from Parahyangan University. The question is, Canada has adopted a feminist foreign policy and several other countries have followed this approach. How can the principles of feminist foreign policy be actively integrated into peacekeeping missions to empower women, enhance their participation, and address gender-specific challenges in conflict and post-conflict settings? I remember I also proposed this kind of question, same too, when I had a experience with German representative. So now I also want to hear it from you, Canada, about this feminist foreign policy. Maybe Melanie, you want to take this?
So yeah, Canada has a feminist foreign policy and also a feminist international assistance policy. One of the cornerstones of that is Canada's National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, our third one that we launched in March of this year. Some of the elements within that is securing and sustaining peace. We have a focus area dedicated to inclusion, and then our defense team our defense team, so including our civilian and military side, has made commitments under each of our 6 focus areas. So that includes, being willing to or making efforts to engage in more meaningful dialogue with civil society, looking at both addressing sexual misconduct within our own forces, but what we need to do more on operations in terms of prevention and response to sexual and gender-based violence. Crisis response, so making sure that we don't forget the integration of gender perspectives in crisis. It's so often, easy when we're doing long-term planning, but when it really counts in crisis, we need to be much more deliberate about integrating that. Justice and accountability is another pillar of this. So looking at how we can support the access to justice, but as well justice and accountability for things like conflict-related sexual violence. But one of the really important things we've learned is that national action plans, these aren't just for countries that consider where, there's an obvious conflict, where it's countries that are actively engaged in conflict. There is a lot of need to implement women, peace, and security domestically in terms of increasing, access and receptiveness of security forces for women's participation, but also the parallels between our domestic environment, what we're trying to promote in international leadership, and making sure we're walking the walk on that at home. I think one of the most important things with the Feminist International Assistance Policy is a very strong commitment to getting funding down, like predictable, regular funding down to grassroots women's organizations, again, recognizing the really important role that they play.
Thank you. And maybe Ms. Farah, you also want to add regarding, even though Malaysia doesn't have like specific feminist foreign policy, but since you are part of the team for formulating a national action plan of WPS in Malaysia, do you have any insight on this relating to this question, but in the context of national action plans in Malaysia? As the questions is about let me check first, how the principles of the feminist foreign policy be actively integrate into peacekeeping missions. So maybe you can also relate it, but with the context of National Action Plan of Malaysia, that you are part of the formulation team. A little bit insight.
We are actually at a very initial stage of our NAP. So I cannot really talk a lot about that. But what we like to integrate in our action plan is we are looking at the ASEAN Action Plan as one of our reference, so that because Malaysia, like Valence said, Malaysia, we don't really have like active conflict situation going on so much. So it's crucial for us to ensure that our but we send a lot of female peacekeepers. We are one of the highest. We have one of the highest numbers of female peacekeepers. So the NAP would probably look at from that angle, right? So and yeah, I think that's all.
Can I have one quick point?
Sure.
One of the things as well is like there's almost 110 countries in the world that have national action plans. So this does also give us a common language to coordinate. But another one of the really important elements is policy coherence. So not just having a national action plan, but ensuring that like WPS is reflected in our defense policy, in our national security strategy, in our foreign policy. And these policies, these high-level policy documents, they do really matter because it gives people on the ground who are trying to work on this every day something to point to say, like, I don't need to renegotiate that this is important. Our leaders have committed to it. You have signed this document. We have this in place. So get on with it. And the policies will only take us so far. So often implementation is the real challenge. So we need to make sure that we don't, again, take our eye off the ball on that, make sure that resources are still going towards that we're looking for policy coherence in other places as well.
Okay. All right. So I think we have like 2 minutes left. So I want to implement what Ms. Farah recommends, that we encourage there is a man as an ally for advancing WPS. So I want to ask if there are any male participants who want to ask for the last question from online or offline, because most of these questions coming from women. questions, clarification, or just comments, or any concern? Anyone from my? Yeah, please.
Well, I just take this opportunity when also I listen a lot of concern and complaint probably from the female military officers in which they are trying to have promotions, especially from the colonel to a star like brigadier generals or major generals. But they got sometimes these promotions as generals. However, they were not given actually portfolio as what they expect, but they suddenly pushed to another portfolio as a chief of training center or something like that, but not in the field which really bring them to the situation in which the challenges are there. This can provide women as military officers as a real leaders in this. Are you experiencing this also in your country? Because I heard this in somewhere else. Thank you.
Do you want to go first? Narati, do you want to go first?
I think that's why I said that we need a strong commitment from the decision maker, the higher, even the highest decision maker. If they give us the chance to do what we are best for, that will be the best thing for us to do. But mostly, as you mentioned before, that mostly is some kind like honoring us, and they give us different field to do. So yeah, even whatever it is, as a military, we will do our best for that position. But if this recommendation can be heard, and hopefully, or inshallah, the feminists will be a part of a way of thinking of our decision maker, then who knows someday, Pak. We do really need your strong support for us for this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Narati. Melanie, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, I certainly think that's something that we still deal with. But I think we also need more data on it. Anecdotally, I have 2 women friends right now who are occupying brigade command positions in the Canadian Army. And I'm fairly confident that if we looked at their career path, they probably had to do 1 to 2 extra jobs to prove themselves, to prove through their performance that they were, qualified for those jobs, vice their male counterparts who had a faster path to get there and were given those opportunities based on their potential rather than having to prove their performance. And I think if we studied this, we would see that we still have perhaps a longer path to some of those, really glass ceiling breaking roles in combat brigades and places like that. On the other side, when you talk about the portfolios that people get promoted into, again, to speak anecdotally of a couple of my female colleagues, my women colleagues, I had one of my peers coming out of unit command was getting promoted to full colonel, and she really wanted to be the chief operations officer of the Army, the G3. But instead, she was told, no, you have a lot more skills on the personnel side. You're a much more empathetic leader. So we need you to go over here and work in the personnel domain. This other guy, typical, stereotypical infantry officer, he doesn't have those other skills. So we can't put him into that role. So we're going to give him the chief operations officer, the G3 of the Army position, based on his deficiencies of not being able to fill this role. But it's a higher profile position that's, working directly for the Army commander and much more likely to get him promoted, to get him the experience that he needs. And it's the experience that she really wanted. And because she was actually a more well-rounded officer who could have done other jobs, either job, she found herself disadvantaged. So I think, that's an area we have to pay attention to. Like, sure, women may at times have more skills, more empathy for a particular job, but it doesn't mean that's the job they want. And they should, again, have equal opportunity to compete for the jobs where maybe those aren't the preeminent skills. We're looking for key operators. I think, we certainly humbly have work to do there.
Ms. Barry, you have any inputs or?
Well, I cannot speak on behalf of the military, of course, but as an outsider from my observation and after I have read about the military culture, I think the military by nature is a conservative institution, and is very it values tradition, and so to change that, the tradition has always been male men, right? So to change that, that's I think one of the biggest challenges that they have to overcome, especially when we talk about gender equality. And I think there's all we're talking about a cultural shift here, so it's not something that is easily done, and probably when you say women are not given the position that they should have, but we also have to ask whether this woman then demanded for them to be given, or they just accept it because they have already adapted into that culture, from the very beginning. So sometimes they didn't get the position that they wanted, probably because they also didn't voice it out, right? Because they just accept it because it's the tradition of the military. Yeah, I think that's just my take on it.
All right, so we have covered all of the questions, and I appreciate all the speakers for their answer. And sorry for the questions that haven't been entertained. To briefly summarize what we have discussed, we have learned about the unique challenges and contribution in women peacekeeping from military to civilian roles. We also have explored the importance of engaging men as allies in advancing the women peace and security agenda. And we also have heard about the success stories and possible recommendations that can help promote women's leadership and meaningful participation in peacekeeping efforts. Before I close this discussion, I want to ask three speakers to make a final statement to summarize of what you have delivered. Maybe from Kolarati, do you want to take this chance first? The final statement?
Yes. So my conclusion for today's discussion, I just would like to see younger generation to get involved in peacekeeping operation, whether as a military or a civilian, and be the role model, the ambassador of your country, the good one in the mission. So you inspiring the local ladies, local women and girls and children to be a part of their peace process in their area, in their nation, or in the conflict area. So inspire them to get involved in the peace process. We don't see as a man or a woman, but please just inspire them to be the actors for their peace process. So not only us, because we just there only for 1 year, 6 months, but this will be less long if you can inspire the local women and girls and also the children there. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel Rati. I think it's followed by Melanie. Do you want to take this chance?
I would just reiterate that women are needed in this space, women belong in this space, and we can't have peace and security or gender equality without women.
For me, I think to encourage more women to join peacekeeping and security roles, we require both societal and institutional support. And we need to first we need to remove the barriers that discourage women from entering these fields. And men should be brought into the conversation not as like a form of token support, but as active participants in challenging gender norms and of course creating structural changes. So and if these men are in positions of power, they can really make their influence can inspire a real change. And as I have also said, it actually starts at home. So we also need to acknowledge that, because societal expectations about gender roles begin at home. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Colonel Rati. Thank you, Melanie and Ms. Farah. Hopefully today's discussion will inspire us to continue working on advancing women, peace and security agenda in whatever peace and security field we are in. Like, for example, me working on peace building, and Melanie, Colonel Rati in peacekeeping, and Farah too. I want to add a quote that I quoted in my undergrad thesis, the words from Cynthia Enloe, the well-known professor in gender and international politics. She talks about women in militarism, mostly. She said that it can be disheartening when you see the careful investigation our colleagues do in war zones get put on the shelves to gather dust. So we need to keep crafting ways to maintain our collective feminist stamina to advancing women, peace, and security. So in all, let's maintain our collective feminist stamina. So to continue push more inclusive and meaningful women's involvement in peacekeeping efforts. Once again, thank you very much for our amazing speakers, for sharing your expertise, your experiences, and thank you for all the participants for being part of today's discussion. Now I will hand the floor back to our MC.
Thank you, Ms. Putri, for moderating this morning's discussion. We would like to thank our distinguished speakers for their time, presentation, and answering the question posed by the audience. Before we end our session, we would like to give our appreciation to our moderator and speakers. We'll be presenting a certificate of appreciation to our moderators and 3 speakers. First of all, for our speaker joining us virtually, Colonel Rati Pusparini, we are presenting a digital certificate. The original hard copy will be sent to your office. May we invite Colin?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And we invite Colonel Rati to activate her camera and so we can commemorate you with the digital certificate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colonel Rati.
Thank you.
now, as for our moderators and two speakers present in person, may I invite the ASEAN IPR Executive Director to come to the stage to present the certificate. We would like to invite Idi Puja to present the certificate to our first speaker, Ms. Farah. Next, we will present the certificate to Colonel Lieutenant Melanie Lee.
Thank you.
And finally, we will present to our moderator, Ms. Putri. Before everyone leaves, may I request a group photo together with the certificate? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may return to your seats. I would like to inform participants that the organizer has prepared a QR code that participants will be able to scan in order to get the e-certificate to today's session. The link will also be provided in the chat box for participants in Zoom. If you are having any difficulties opening the link, please send us an email to aipr.secretariat@gmail.com. The email address will also be in the chat box as well. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with this, we conclude the second session of ASEAN IPR's Discussion Series 2024. We'd like to express our sincere gratitude to the ASEAN IPR Governing Council and Advisory Board, the Mission of Canada to ASEAN, and ASEAN IPR's partner, and the participating guests present this morning for your full attention and engagement to the discussion. This has been an incredibly productive discussion, and I hope everyone finds something valuable to take away from our session today. If you're interested in participating in our next session of ASEAN IPR's discussion series, stay tuned to our social media page and website for more updates. And for participants who were provided allocated parking spaces, kindly be reminded to return your access card when exiting the parking area. Our team will be on standby in the lobby to assist with the access card return. Thank you. We look forward to welcoming you to our next event. Safe travels home and take care.
Thank you. Yes. I'm on
Congratulations. Thank you so much. I want to